Hello and welcome to the Corporate Secretary Yearbook. In this video series, we're talking to a number of nominees for the Corporate Governance Awards. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Wendy Cassidy, Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer at Nuance Communications. And she will be talking to us about her nomination as Governance Professional of the Year in the Small to Mid-Cap category and for Governance Team of the Year, again, in the Small to Mid-Cap group. Welcome, Wendy, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You joined Nuance, I believe, in September 2018, and sort of set about hiring new members for your team and launching a very impressive work program. I'd like to just talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that you and the team have worked over in the past year or so. A key aspect of that has been implementing an extensive off-season and in-season shareholder outreach campaign. How have you approached that, and what sort of results have you seen as a result of your efforts?
Sure. Well, historically, Nuance had not done a lot of shareholder outreach outside of the IR context. And as part of our really transformation of our corporate governance that was initiated by me and our new CEO and really our new board, we wanted to get feedback from our shareholders broadly to get guidance on what we should be focusing on and what their priorities were and what we should be thinking about in terms of governance. And so we put in place an entire campaign of reaching out very broadly to our shareholders, putting a PowerPoint deck together where we walked them through our governance, walked them through our executive compensation program, and really it was about listening what were the areas that they wanted us to focus on, and then we took action against all of those items over the next year.
Apologies. And what sort of feedback have you had from shareholders as a result of that, of you going out and listening to them?
Feedback we got was they wanted to hear from us on ESG, which was not an area that we had been providing a lot of disclosure, and so that was useful. They had a number of comments in terms of executive compensation, both changes that they wanted us to make to our program and ways that they wanted us to more fully disclose that program in our proxy statement, which we definitely went ahead and did. Then they had a lot of questions around diversity on our board, on our executive team, in our employee base, which both in terms of the disclosure that they wanted us to provide and areas that they wanted us to focus on, which we've taken action against, and some areas of governance where they wanted us to tighten up some of our policies and some of our procedures, which we've also done in response to that.
Okay, and as you say, you hadn't put out a lot of information on ESG previously, and you published the first ESG report for the company. How do you go about sort of starting from fresh with that? It's obviously a very complicated and a challenging thing for companies to do. How did you go about taking that off the runway?
Yeah, so that's true. It was a lot for, and there's not we didn't have a lot of models to go by. We did. I reached out to GC Network and asked some other GCs how had they gone about maybe doing a first report and getting a program off of the ground. We did engage a consultant who had helped with both, and we, working with this consultant, we really went across the company and pulled in members of teams that were already doing ESG type work. They just didn't know that it kind of now has that name, and gather that information and work with this consultant to package it and put it forward in our report.
Okay, so yes, it's a big project to start off on. You also overhauled the online compliance training at the company and sort of increased participation in that. Obviously, that's, I imagine, something that's been very helpful this year, given that everyone's, I imagine, or many people are still working remotely. How did you sort of go about improving that sort of program, and how do you try and get better buy-in from employees to take part?
I think a big one is that this same content had kind of been rehashed year after year, and so there was fatigue on the part of employees of having to take it, and so we made a concerted effort. We brought in new members of the team to choose that content, real subject matter areas across the company rather than kind of the same folks. And we reviewed different vendor content and looked for, our goal was completely new content versus the previous year. So new faces, new topics, so that it felt fresher and so that when we rolled it out to employees, we'd be able to say, I promise you that nothing that you're about to see is something that you've seen before. And that helped, especially in terms of uptake. And we also looked for ways to make the training shorter. I think it had become bloated as there were, stakeholders who all wanted their kind of pet topics covered by the compliance training, but we looked for ways to streamline and being able to say to employees, we've tightened it up, we've made it more targeted, we've made it more focused on our business today versus kind of every topic that somebody might want to cover. Employees could see that we had made that effort, and they responded by getting their training done quicker and a much higher completion rate.
Excellent. And you also overhauled the whistleblower hotline. I know that's something that obviously it's very important to any compliance program. How did you sort of go about, again, how did you go about doing that and making it more effective for the company?
One of the things that we did is we created a naming contest where we had employees vote on our intranet and ask them which name they liked to rebrand the hotline, because whistleblower hotline sounds intimidating and doesn't sound like something that employees will want to pick up the phone and use. And so we created some names that were more catchy and more reflective of our company brand. And the name that employees voted on was Integrity, with N for Nuance.
Okay.
And we called it our Integrity Helpline. And we really created collateral around it that looked more employee friendly, that looked more welcoming, and have been reinforcing through all different channels the fact that it's a helpline that you can reach out to if you have a question or a concern, not a scary kind of hotline. And as a result, we've gotten more uptake and use of the helpline, which we view as a positive reflection on the health and strength of our compliance program.
That's great. And well, just lastly, I mean, as I say, there's a very impressive list of things that you've been working on over the last year or so. Is there any of the things that we haven't covered, anything that you'd particularly like to point out that you've been particularly proud of?
Yeah, we're also proud of the fact that we created on our website this year a trust center where we highlight areas that we've worked on in data security, data privacy, and compliance. Again, things that we had been doing that we now really make them kind of customer-facing, investor-facing, and even employee-facing, that they can see it laid out in one place, some of those areas and how we're benefiting those stakeholders in those different areas.
Excellent. Well, Wendy Cassidy, thank you very much for joining us, and well done again on the nominations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.